We approached it like a drama in 3 acts.
This is what Teldrassil burned for. This is what Warcraft 3 was recontextualized for. All those things you thought were one way, but were informed were actually the other way because of this brand new plot. This is the reason why. This is what Blizzard purchased with that price. Zovaal is a parasitic villain. His existence is justified by his manufactured connection to established lore. Lore that often had to be bent and massaged in this new direction. At the very least, emotionally. For the end of Warcraft 3, when Arthas takes up the Lich King's armor, that is now him sitting atop a spire made over Titan technology to access the world soul of Azeroth. Arthas isn't exactly who we thought he was. Ner'zhul also isn't exactly who we thought he was. The Helm of Domination is not what we thought it was. Much of the lore they're going here is kinda cool and actually could have worked really well, but it was told so terribly in-game that the realities of storytelling brutally murder any chance this lore had to work. As far as I can tell, this end cinematic to Shadowlands' final raid is pretty much universally reviled, so we're going to dive into why, what happened, and what it's going to mean for World of Warcraft going forward. There's at least one bit of good news though. Shadowlands is canonically sealed away, hopefully never to be thought of again. Unlike Skillshare, today's sponsor, hell yeah, where you can, the first 1,000 of you to follow my link down below, get a free month of Skillshare Premium, which is pretty awesome because Michael Moore wants to teach you programming and he wants to teach you Unity. And take it from me, somebody who did hardcore, you could say kind of boring, custom engine programming, diving into the GLSL and all of that. Let me tell you, this is actually the way to learn game development stuff. Plus, learning by doing is the best, and what better way to, say, learn C# than to make a game in Unity? Plus, Michael's courses are on the latest versions of Unity too, so the industry standard stuff. Now, these are resources that just didn't exist in such a good form when I or my friends were starting off, so believe me, if I could swap my years at university for, honestly, just doing Skillshare like Michael's course here, I'd do that. So do that, do some game jams, meet some people in your local scene, just make some cool stuff. Now, these are for beginners, and they take you right the way through to intermediate. They're awesome. He's got 2D, 3D, building an RPG. What an awesome resource to just have. And you can get it on Skillshare, the online learning community for creators, today. So what better way to use that free month by following my link down below and getting started. Okay, let's go.
Eternity's End serves as the final chapter of one book of the Warcraft saga.
Right, let's get the basics sorted out then. So, in the pre-fight cutscene, Zovaal once again taunts us, asking if our mortal minds can fathom just how long he's waited, if we can fathom every event he set into motion, every pawn he's put into place. And yeah, Blizzard sure are going heavy on making us feel like it's the uber mastermind angle, which is implausible and frankly way less interesting than, say, the opportunist angle that Taliesin put forward. So you could say that Zovaal's just saying this, trying to be menacing, and that he was in fact just an opportunist with a long time horizon. I think that's true actually, but Blizzard should think about how a character will feel as presented to their audience. Actually know the player experience. Anyway, we see that yes, Icecrown is, all a ploy to get to the soul of Azeroth. Now, Zovaal notes she's wounded, and that is, I think, certainly referencing the sword that Sargeras plunged into her in Legion. Now, of course, Sargeras and the Burning Legion are all tied to the character of Zovaal now, as the Dreadlords were responsible for nudging Sargeras to madness aeons ago, but, just basically by letting him know how spooky Void was. Then, of course, the Dreadlords themselves infiltrated the Burning Legion. They facilitated the whole Lich King plan, which, eventually led to Sylvanas' role in Shadowlands, and also, Icecrown Citadel being built the way it was, where it is. All of that is tied back. So yeah, all of, that, and then the big sword, that's why Azeroth's weak enough for the plan to work. So the engines in the Forge of Souls dungeon fire up, cool dungeon by the way, and the spire of Icecrown Citadel flows with Azerite. Yep, via Zereth Mortis, Zovaal can access Azeroth's power, and of course his whole plan is to, use all of that to dominate all the other Zereth installations and all the other planes of the cosmos, so that the whole cosmos is under his control, so that reality can be remade in his liking. And the reason why will surprise you. More later. More after the break. He then cheesily repeats a line he said at the start of the expansion about death coming for the soul of your world, and then he says, "Bear witness to eternity's end." Now this is a haunting line that reminds me of that great bit of Star Wars where Obi-Wan says, "What is this, Luke? Some kind of Star War?" Chills. I am literally shook. Matt actually put it best in his tweet. He said, "You can't name drop your patch title without earning it. You can't try to be cool, you actually have to be cool." Brutal and true. And with that, the fight for Azeroth begins! And to be honest with you, bar the cheese and the really hammy writing, that trailer would have been fine. And tying all of this into a dungeon that we enjoyed years ago is quite neat. And this could have all been really fantastic, had they done any of the work to actually earn it. You know, if the content of Shadowlands actually told the main plot of Shadowlands, instead of just generalized faffing around the place in between Blizzard doing big plot reveal cinematics. Zovaal, of course, does fail, and we do defeat him. And you may think, yay, he's dead! Finally, we're going to get to find out his motivations. No. It is time to get plot that explains why he did what he did, but of course, nothing on an emotional character level. So, this end cinematic basically is mostly a flashback to when he was first banished. Carestia says he'll be bound forevermore. The Winter Queen says that he has threatened the cycle of life and death. Denathrius has the more interesting line that definitely shows us he was even villainous back then. He says, "You could have sought another way, brother. Imagine what we could have accomplished together." Obviously, they do end up working together. I mean, so that could mean, yes, together as Eternals, but it could also be together as a duo, and this is obviously a line that's just saying, hey, Denathrius, he'll be a villain in the future. Which I'm down for, actually. Now, the Primus asks the question of why. What drove Zovaal to this end? And what he gets back is big. He says, "You preserve that which is doomed. A cosmos divided will not survive what is to come." Now, we still don't know what. Why did Zovaal betray them? What did he actually do to piss them off? Who was hurt by what he did? Why didn't he seek their help to solve this big problem of what was coming? Who knows? What are his personal motivations? Is there anything more to him? Is he a character? Does he have thoughts and feelings? And with that, the last of his energy goop fades, and he turns into a husk. It looks kind of neat. The rift over Icecrown closes, and that's that. Now, of course, we have canonical portals from the Shadowlands, so, we'll get home just fine. I imagine we'll close them behind us. And there we have it, Eternity's End. This tearjerker of a cinematic is what, they butchered 20 years of lore for. Just incredible. Must have been written by literal 2 IQ donkeys because it doesn't even hold up to the most basic scrutiny. But before we poke holes in it, let's talk of what comes next. Because a lot of people are shocked by that, but honestly, I wasn't.
Shadowlands is like the final chapter of one book of the Warcraft saga, and our team is already hard at work on the next stories to come. Can't talk about them quite yet, but when the time is right, we're going to be really excited to share them with you.
Yes, Zovaal was actually doing all of this for the greater good, as long as he came out on top. He was doing this, though, to prevent the ultimate doom by uniting the cosmos so that it will survive what is to come, whatever that may be. I mean, what is it? Is it the firstest ones from the before time in the Protolands? For many, this is just Blizzard pulling the rug out from under them again, saying, no, actually, it's bigger! There's another massive threat. It's Sargeras 3.0. And obviously that is very tiresome, and there's just so little character to any of this stuff. Now, as for what the threat is, well, buckle up, people who get salty at our lore videos who seem to think we make all the shit up, because we've been telling you this shit for months. So, you've got the old ones in the Eyes of the Earth Mother story. Now, if you take Eyes of the Earth Mother as a creation allegory, then it would kind of predate the old god stuff going on in Azeroth, so there's that. Also, Zovaal is almost certainly not talking about Void Lords here. Void Lords, we assume, are like the pantheon of the Void Force, so they're on the same level as him. That would basically mean that Void is a part of the cosmos that needs to be united in his worldview. So that means it's a threat larger than all of them. Now, we've got a video on the Devourers that I recorded last week. It's coming out soon enough. That will really tell all here. Suffice to say, there's a lot more to the Devourers than most players are aware of. Now, of course, you may wonder how Zovaal knew this would happen. Good question. We have no idea. I think I know why. It's to do with fate, and I'll have that at the end of the video, but we've got no insight into his original rebellion. Would have been nice to know how that went, but I guess we never will. Motivations. It's usually good for characters to have motivations, and also, goals aren't motivations. You know, a motivation is like the why of the goal. You know, what's pushing these guys forward? Zovaal wants to stop the threat because he's a good guy. He's a misunderstood hero. What does this mean about how he sees himself and his kin? What kind of person is he? These are all things we're basically never going to know. Also, the logic of this kind of falls to pieces. Why did Zovaal not tell anyone about this if he truly was concerned about this upcoming threat? I mean, he apparently knew about this threat for ages, and he decided to tell nobody about it, and instead he just made everyone hate him. As Dakor and our team put it, I guess our mortal minds cannot fathom his sheer stupidity. Of course, it could all get worse, because Sylvanas. Did he tell her? What did he tell her? Are we only going to find that out in the epilogue cinematic of patch 9.2.5, or the Sylvanas novel, meaning that we're only going to find out key facts and motivations, on the final page of the book we've just finished? Are Blizzard mad? I have never, in all of my days covering media and watching media, seen such rubbish storytelling. Then also the Devourers. They're clearly a big threat as portrayed, and they've been able to reach Zareth Mortis because of the interactions with Mawsteel and the Mawsworn. So nice one, Zovaal. I guess your mortal mind can't fathom the consequences of its actions. Very cool. Now, speaking of motivation, do you remember that bit when Sylvanas said, "The world is a prison and I will set you all free"? What does that mean? How so? Now that we're at basically the endish bit of the expansion, it would be neat to understand that line. Might have been good to understand it a bit earlier in the expansion. I mean, I suppose it's because the whole setup of reality, as made by the first ones, is some sort of horrible big system to cultivate and harvest soul energy for some sort of non-specific end, perhaps to stop the Devourers, who knows. We're all prisoners to this grand big cycle with, Carestia and co. being the true jailers of everyone. But that's pretty much just a speculation, isn't it? Oh, and wait, it's time for you to understand just how cosmically stupid their narrative designers are. Ish. So, Zovaal wanted to unite the cosmos, right? Well, did you know that it was in fact him that divided the cosmos? Yes, the Dreadlord infiltration doc found in Revendreth covers Team Maw's big plan to, have the Dreadlords sneak into the various different power structures of the various different cosmic forces and essentially play them against each other and destabilize them. So all that he has done is he succeeded in weakening the various cosmic forces and leaving the cosmos far more vulnerable. Now the thing is, the idea of a villain becoming what they hate, or managing to achieve the opposite of their end goal, in their sort of journey to try to achieve their goal, that actually can be brilliant storytelling. It can work really well. But the reason why I bring it up here in this way is that Blizzard didn't tell that story. It ain't there. Epic. Now, of course, the thing though is, we've seen stuff like this before. Sargeras created the Burning Legion to snuff out all life in the cosmos, to unite all of the cosmos in his way, because he wanted to prevent the spread of Void, believing that it would cause the end of all things. Arthas Menethil, per Warcraft Chronicle as Lich King, wanted to unite Azeroth in undeath so that it could stand against existential threats. In Mists of Pandaria, Rathian wanted to unite Azeroth under one faction so that it could stand against the threat of the Legion. And I'm sure there's more, but man, Blizzard. Zovaal is just Sargeras again, but maybe bigger and more confusing, with less character somehow. But the thing is, Sargeras worked because he was a looming larger-than-life threat that we saw the ramifications of for such a long time, unlike with Zovaal. And the thing is, whenever the Legion would come, we would know it's Sargeras, but we would also know we're not going to meet Sargeras, and it was built over a very long time. Instead of retroactively just being told, oh, Icecrown, all those things, they were actually that guy. That's not how you tell the story, Blizz. And the really funny thing is, they could have done it such that all of this Lich King shenanigans stuff, weakened the Shadowlands or something, and allowed Zovaal, a original, unconnected villain, to do his thing. They could have made him a new threat with no ties to the old lore. Instead, they just butchered things that we liked to try to make us think he was cool. And, they've just copied other people's homework and changed a few names. Sargeras betrays the Titans. Zovaal betrays the Eternals. Come on. But wait, it's time for things to get strange. Do you remember Venari? I sure do. She was cool. Sure would have been nice if that went somewhere. Here's the thing, and there's so many more examples of that, but there's just no way the Shadowlands was supposed to have 2 patches. Now, Ian said that their plan was to have, these 2 patches all the time, but I'm 99% sure he is, in fact, by the spirit of the truth, lying. Same for Steve when he says that it was always supposed to be a drama in 3X. That's bullshit. They'd totally cut a patch. I mean, if Ian is saying that their plan was always to give us less content, fewer patches, for the same amount of subscription money, well, that's pretty bad, Ian. I hope you're lying for your own sake. I mean, what a completely unaware and bonkers thing to tell your players. So hopefully these 2 guys understand that, looking at the expansion they shipped, it's far better for them if we all just say those stories are false, just made for PR, because unlike that critically acclaimed MMORPG with a free trial that actually extends to the critically acclaimed Heavensward expansion, Blizzard are just incapable of being honest with their players and admitting to failure where it actually counts in a grander scheme. I mean, come on. Between 9.0 and 9.1, Zovaal had like 37 lines of dialogue, most of them being very short. There's no friggin' way this is what they planned to do originally, because if this is an incredible drama in 3 acts like they planned, then frankly they should be out of a job. Because no one would do this bad a job. So I am being charitable when I say I think they're lying about Shadowlands all going to plan. They just aren't allowed to be honest, because that's the way Blizzard seems to have been ran. Logic is also fun here. I just want to pay some lip service to it. So, the Helm of Domination being ripped shattered the veil between worlds. That meant Torghast could, touch Icecrown, and Icecrown was, of course, built over the Titan machines or whatever. Okay, so then Zovaal gets his Aerith Mortis, and he, remote controls something, which then makes the Azerite flow up from Icecrown and into Torghast, and then somehow into Aerith Mortis, so I guess maybe Torghast is also like an anima conduit or something, who the hell knows. But then killing Zovaal makes the whole thing stop. Why? How? Why? I mean, I'm sure there's a logic to it, but just like how Game of Thrones Season 8, which, by the way, the person leading World of Warcraft's narrative thought was excellent, relied on explanations such as the showrunner saying in an interview, she kind of forgot, the logic is just not on screen. It's not shown well. I recommend thinking about all of this as little as you can. I mean, not to mention how he's this big cosmic mastermind, but somehow he still watches us bust into his house, defeat all of his top people, and somehow he's not even worried about fighting us. I mean, that's a pretty typical MMO problem, but it's just harder to pull off when you've got such a flat, mastermind, unemotional archetype character. Instead of an emotionally driven villain sticking it to the bitter end. Okay, we've got more things to talk about. So let's revisit the incredible work that we have experienced over the last 4 years of following World of Warcraft's narrative. In Battle for Azeroth, they destroyed Teldrassil, they mangled Night Elf lore, they upended the Horde, they destroyed the character of Sylvanas, they burnt through lore potential with Ashara and Nazjatar with immense speed, and then they managed to ruin N'Zoth. Then, they ripped Warcraft 3's lore to shreds, they attacked the very foundation of the modern game world, and honestly, it is truly impressive that they've done this. I mean, they have spent 4 years flat out trying to destroy what roots people to Warcraft. Dare I say, they've managed to make Game of Thrones Season 8 look competent. It's impressive. I mean, at least Game of Thrones Season 8 had some spectacle to it. This just all makes you wonder why. Even with them having this paper-thin A-plot, why did they cram in a botched Elune plot into this expansion? There wasn't room. Why did they spend so much time messing around with details that they would never elaborate on when the story they were trying to tell was fumbling and falling over? Speaking of which, we have to talk about fate. So here's the deal. The Maw-Walker is prophesized, right? That's one of the things we learn when we first come to Oribos. And all this language of fractals. Here's the thing, the fractal is it's like an output of an equation, right? And you can sort of scrub them forward and backwards when you're, say, just portraying a Mandelbrot sequence or something, okay? So the thing about the fractal is, it's kind of like rote and deterministic, I suppose. And remember, the title you get at the end of this is Defender of the Pattern or Protector of the Pattern. So the whole thing is the first one's grand design, right? Now, that makes me think that Zovaal basically worked out what the first ones were actually doing. And I basically think that there was some form of planned obsolescence. That the universe as has been set up right now by the first ones pretty much has an expiry date to some greater plan that the first ones have. I think that sort of makes sense, because think about this. Why is the Mawwalker prophesized? Is the Mawwalker prophesized... Does that basically mean that the first ones knew Zovaal was going to do what he did? And it was all part of the pattern? Like, they had all of this stuff about fate kind of near the start of this expansion. What's going on with that? How did Zovaal learn what he learned? At the end of this, Fareem basically speculates that, sure, Zovaal's been defeated, but he's actually damaged the pattern. He's damaged the first one's design, and this could be a very bad thing. I mean, all this, world as a prison stuff, that makes a lot more sense if, the whole setup of the cosmos is just some sort of end that we don't yet understand, but is not in our best interests. So there's all this stuff about fate, and, like, the very grand macro narrative that, people who enjoyed, like, fighting the Scarlet Crusade and killing zombies, and, the more grounded fantasy. So this shit ain't it. It ain't it, dude. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Steve, you gotta turn the train around. You gotta bend those tracks back into the realm of normality. You guys can't pull this shit off. I mean, unless there's just something I don't know. Unless it turns out that, your budget has been quadrupled for the next expansion and, you're going to completely upend things and somehow, tell this story in the game. But as it stands, like, they are just not capable of telling this story. The past 4 years they have proven that. And as much as I would love to see them, turn it around and tell this story and reach all of their ambitions, it's like, man, what can I judge? All that I can really judge this by is what I've been asked to pay for as a customer. And it's been rough. And then I suppose to talk about the future, look, the next expansion is not going to be cosmic. I'm 99% sure. I mean, Ian almost just flat out said it in an interview a while back. So I do think it's going to be grounded. It's going to be Azerothian. I have a feeling it's not going to feel like the Shadowlands. I'm also fairly sure that loads of people in the World of Warcraft development team think this is a load of shit. I really do think that. There's been times in the past where that's very much, that's been hinted at me very much, So I think there's a lot of dissent in the team, and I think it's probably a good thing that this failed so hard, because if this had have been a really, if this had have worked or just at least been okay or been sort of controversial, only disliked by the usual suspects, then they would have all the ammunition in the world to plow ahead with this. But I now think that the people in the room who are saying, guys, what are we doing? This is shit. Oh my God. They've got all the ammunition in the world now to make their case in any form of internal pitch or internal debate over, what do we do in the next expansion? How do we design things? So that's... If I was going to clutch onto a shred of hope, it is that whatever decision-making has led to the last, while, that can be voted down handily by people. Because the best that I could tell is that just about everyone disliked this. I've barely seen people like it. The best I've seen is, like, indifference. And people just saying, like, I don't care about the lore. So... holy shit. What a narrative accomplishment. What a narrative accomplishment. And that's it. Now, look, there is going to be an epilogue cinematic. It may happen at the end of the campaign, but it also might happen in patch 9.2.5, because there was things that we thought we were getting in 9.2, just regarding like the final encrypted cinematic and the final step of the campaign, but they don't actually seem to be in the journal anymore, and that makes me think maybe they're going to be in 9.2.5. Perhaps that will allow Blizzard to expand them and, beef them out a little bit, so they can somehow salvage something from this. But look, overall my takeaway is... how do you manage to do Shadowlands? The scale and scope of narrative failure is impressive. And the only thing more impressive is how much they have damaged the foundations of the Warcraft franchise that reside outside of the Shadowlands by making Zovaal a parasitic villain who is attached to the Burning Legion and Arthas, and really to just so many, maybe even most, of the events that have actually shaped the game universe that we've been, experiencing in one way or another for, well over 20 years, in fact. Yeah, it would almost make you regret playing Warcraft 3 as a kid, wouldn't you? That they've went and done this. Whatever caused this has to go. And I'm not saying that's a person. Maybe it's a team being dysfunctional. Maybe it's some weird thing where the narrative team are just always playing second fiddle to what, maybe the people making the big decisions don't give a shit about narrative and just continually, cut their scope and cut things. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's production issues. Who the hell knows? All that I know is that the end result is that they are killing Warcraft. They're not killing World of Warcraft. They're killing Warcraft. And if I was Mike Ybarra, if I was anyone in Activision who was higher up, I would see the likes of this as an existential threat to the long-term value that can be delivered to shareholders. Because this is severing the emotional bonds that people have with Warcraft, and those emotional bonds are monetizable. Those emotional bonds earned you a subscription fee every month and additional microtransactions in the store. So the financial hurt that this will cause is very real indeed. It might play out longer than they think, and they might be able to juice the numbers to be a little bit higher than they used to be by monetizing more deeply. But it's like, okay, sure, you're getting higher yields from a smaller field, but you're still losing land and you're losing potential. Sort this shit out. This cannot last. That's it for me. If you want to support the channel, if you want to support the channel, check out Skillshare, check out today's sponsor. It certainly does help in this realm where, maybe in 5 years' time, it'll be like, there'll be 4 or 5 of us left. I'll be making little presentations, it'll all be in person, and that'll be it. That'll be it. There'll be like 7 Warcraft fans left because they will have attacked every other thing that we used to like in this franchise and driven everyone off. Who knows? Anyway, check out Skillshare. Thank you to them for supporting the content we make and today's video. And that is it for me. I'll see you soon, where we will be explaining things like how Azeroth is the center of everything and what the Devourers actually mean. It is that thing. They actually make kind of cool lore. They just shoot themselves in the head and the foot with their storytelling. And lore is what you know, storytelling is what you feel. You have to get the feelings bit right first. Goodbye.